The emergency beacon was screaming at Nora Blake's shuttle when she dropped out of hyperspace above Kythara Preserve, which was her first clue that this wouldn't be the routine wildlife relocation she'd been promised. Her second clue was the complete absence of anyone answering her communications. Kythara Control. This is Dr. Blake with the Xenobiological Survey. I'm here for the Vorthak cub pickup. Anyone home? Static. The kind of static that meant either everyone was dead, or everyone had decided somewhere else was a much better place to be. Nora checked her mission briefing again. 5 orphaned Vorthak cubs. Routine relocation to a proper breeding facility. Simple extraction job that any competent xenobiologist could handle in their sleep. She should have known better. In her 12 years of fieldwork, routine jobs had a disturbing tendency to involve things trying to eat her. The preserve's main landing pad was empty except for a few abandoned shuttles and what looked suspiciously like scorch marks. The kind that suggested something with claws and poor impulse control had been expressing its feelings about captivity. Nora's shuttle settled onto the pad with a gentle thunk that echoed across the eerily quiet facility. Through her cockpit windows, she could see the preserve stretching out in all directions. 200 square kilometers of carefully maintained alien wilderness designed to house the galaxy's most photogenic and least friendly wildlife. The place was supposed to be secure, contained, safe for tourists who wanted to see apex predators without becoming lunch. The abandoned emergency vehicles scattered around the landing area suggested that plan might have hit a snag. Nora grabbed her field kit and stepped out of the shuttle. The preserve's artificial atmosphere was warm and humid, designed to mimic the homeworlds of various predator species. It smelled like jungle and something else, something that made the back of her brain start screaming about immediate retreat. Fear. The smell was fear. Her communication device crackled to life with a recorded message that had apparently been playing on loop for the past 6 hours. Attention all personnel. Containment breach in sectors 12 through 38. Full evacuation protocols in effect. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. All staff report to emergency extraction points immediately. Nora looked around the empty facility. Bit late for that announcement, don't you think? The research station was a kilometer inland, connected to the landing pad by a raised walkway that offered scenic views of the preserve's various habitats. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a pleasant stroll through some of the galaxy's most impressive ecosystems. Today, it felt like walking through a buffet line where she was the main course. Something howled in the distance. Then something else answered. Then something third joined in with what sounded like a hunting call. That made Nora's skin crawl. Containment breach, she muttered. Right. So instead of 5 baby space tigers in a nice secure facility, I'm probably looking at 5 baby space tigers surrounded by every apex predator on the planet. The walkway's emergency lighting was still functional, casting everything in that special shade of red that meant, something has gone horribly wrong. Please panic appropriately. Nora kept her pace steady and her eyes moving. No point in running yet. She didn't know what she was running from. The research station came into view after 10 minutes of walking through increasingly ominous jungle sounds. It was a squat, reinforced building designed to withstand everything the preserve could throw at it. The building was intact, but the defensive barriers around it were flickering like dying light bulbs, and the sounds coming from inside weren't equipment malfunctions. They were crying, baby animal crying, the kind of distressed calls that meant scared, hungry cubs who didn't understand why their world had suddenly become a nightmare. Nora accessed the station's external feeds through her field tablet. Interior showed 5 Vorthak cubs huddled together in the main research lab, all of them making pitiful sounds that would have been adorable under different circumstances. The external feeds showed why the cubs were crying. The research station was surrounded. Shadowstalkers prowled the perimeter, wolf-like predators whose natural camouflage made them nearly invisible until they moved. Razor wings circled overhead, their metallic feathers glinting in the artificial sunlight. Something that looked like a cross between a bear and a tank was testing the station's rear defenses with casual swipes of claws that could punch through steel. And every single one of them was focused on the research station where 5 cubs were broadcasting their location with every terrified cry. Well, Nora said to herself, this is going to be fun. She accessed the station's communication system and tried to reach the cubs directly. The translation software kicked in, rendering her words in basic Vorthak pack speak. Hello, little ones. I'm here to help. Can you understand me? 5 small faces turned toward the security feed, eyes wide with hope and terror. Human, came the reply in broken standard. Help! Scared! Pack mother's gone! Nora felt something twist in her chest. They were babies, alien babies, sure, with claws that could slice through titanium and acid glands that wouldn't fully develop for another year. But babies nonetheless. And they were trapped in a building that was currently being treated as a takeout restaurant by everything with teeth in a 50-kilometer radius. The station's defensive systems were failing. She could see it in the power readings, hear it in the way the barriers flickered. Maybe another hour before complete breakdown. The cubs' crying was getting louder, more desperate. And with every sound they made, more. Predators emerged from the jungle to investigate the source of what their instincts told them was easy prey. Nora checked her equipment. Standard xenobiologist field kit, emergency medical supplies, basic survival gear. Nothing designed for fighting her way through a gauntlet of apex predators. She looked at the external feeds again. The predators were getting bolder, testing the barriers more frequently. The cubs were getting more scared, crying louder, attracting more attention. Simple math. The longer she waited, the worse it got. Right, Nora said, shouldering her pack. Time to collect some baby space tigers. She accessed the station's emergency protocols and began the override sequence for the service tunnel entrance. It would put her inside the building, but it would also temporarily disable a section of the defensive perimeter. The predators would notice immediately. But that was a problem for future Nora. Present Nora just needed to get to 5 scared cubs before they became someone's lunch. The service tunnel hatch opened with a soft hiss, and Nora dropped into the maintenance corridor that ran beneath the research station. Behind her, she could hear the distinctive sound of very large, very hungry animals discovering a new way into the building. This is why I should have studied rocks, she muttered, crawling through the access tunnel toward 5 baby aliens who were about to become her responsibility, whether she survived the next few hours or not. Nora emerged from the service tunnel into the research station's main lab to find 5 Vorthak cubs the size of house cats, each capable of growing into something that could bite through starship hulls, all looking at her like she was the most wonderful thing they'd ever seen. Human, chirped the largest cub, a female with distinctive silver stripes. Pack mother. I'm not your pack mother, Nora said automatically, then paused. Actually, scratch that. For the next few hours, I'm absolutely your pack mother, and pack mother says we're leaving. Now. The cubs clustered around her legs, purring like chainsaws, and making soft, chittering sounds that her translator rendered as variations on safe, warm family protection. They were adorable in the way that baby apex predators always were, right up until you remembered what they'd grow into. Through the station's reinforced windows, Nora could see the defensive perimeter failing in real time. Shadowstalkers were testing the barriers with increasing boldness, their nearly invisible forms rippling like heat mirages. Something that looked like an armored rhinoceros with too many teeth was methodically dismantling the rear security fence. And they were all working together. That's not normal, Nora muttered, watching predator species that should have been competing for territory coordinate their attack patterns like a military unit. Apex predators don't cooperate. It goes against basic evolutionary psychology. The cubs were following her, gaze, their large eyes tracking the movement of predators outside. The smallest male, barely larger than a kitten, made a soft questioning sound. Bad things, little one, Nora told him. Very bad things that want to make us into lunch. She started grabbing emergency supplies from the station's storage lockers. Flares, deterrent spray, emergency rations, medical kit. Not exactly military hardware, but it would have to do. The cubs watched her preparations with intense curiosity, occasionally mimicking her movements. When she shouldered her pack, they clustered together in formation. When she checked the seals on her equipment, they sniffed the air and tested their own small claws. You're learning, Nora realized. You're watching me and learning survival behaviors. The silver-striped female chirped agreement. Her name, according to the facility records, was Kess. The others were Tor, Vin, Jala, and Little Pip. 5 alien children who just decided she was their best hope for survival. Right. Emergency evacuation protocols. We go through the maintenance tunnels to the emergency exit, then it's a 2-kilometer sprint to the shuttle pad through active hunting grounds. Simple. The cubs looked at her with absolute trust. I'm definitely going to get us all killed, she added. The maintenance tunnels were supposed to be predator-proof. The keyword being supposed. Nora could hear scratching sounds in the walls, and the emergency lighting was flickering in patterns that suggested something large was testing the structural integrity of the building. She'd rigged a makeshift carrier from emergency blankets and cargo strapping, creating a way to transport 5 cubs while keeping her hands free. The cubs had climbed in without protest, instinctively understanding that mobility meant survival. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "And whatever happens, stay with me." They emerged from the tunnels into the preserve's main habitat zone to discover that worst-case scenario had been an optimistic assessment. Every apex predator on the planet appeared to have converged on their location. Shadowstalkers prowled the undergrowth in coordinated packs. Razor wings circled overhead in formation flight patterns. Something that looked like a living siege engine was systematically destroying the emergency shelters between them and the shuttle pad. And they were all following the cubs' scent trail with the focused intensity of professional hunters. "Okay," Nora said to herself. "Time to be creative." She activated an emergency flare and threw it into the brush to her left. The Shadowstalkers immediately converged on the bright light, their pack coordination faltering as individual hunting instincts overrode group behavior. "Lesson 1, she told the cubs. "Predators are predictable. They follow light, sound, and scent. Use that against them." The cubs were watching her every move with fascination. When she pulled out the wildlife deterrent spray and demonstrated proper grip technique, they mimicked her posture. When she showed them how to use terrain for cover, they immediately applied the lesson. "You're fast learners," Nora muttered, moving through the undergrowth with 5 alien children who were apparently born with military tactical instincts. The razorwings found them first. The metallic feathered birds dove from above in coordinated strikes, their razor-sharp wings designed to slice through anything that moved. Nora rolled sideways, protecting the cubs with her body while swinging her improvised club, a piece of metal railing she'd salvaged from the station. The cubs watched her fight with intense concentration. When the second wave of razor wings attacked, they were ready. Kess, the silver-striped female, had positioned herself to guard the carrier's left flank. Tor covered the right. The others had created a defensive triangle that maximized their ability to protect each other. They were 5-month-old cubs using human military formation tactics. "Where did you learn that?" Nora gasped, batting away another razor wing. "Watch Pack Mother," Kess chirped. "Learn fight, learn protect." Nora stared at them. The cubs had absorbed her defensive positioning in real time and adapted it to their own capabilities. They weren't just following her lead. They were thinking tactically. "You're not normal cubs, are you?" "Vorthak learn fast," Pip squeaked. "Need learn fast. Everything want eat Vorthak." Which explained a lot about their species' reputation as galactic apex predators. They didn't just grow into killing machines. They started as tactical geniuses. The shuttle pad was still a kilometer away when Nora's communication device started screaming with incoming transmissions. "This is Commander Voss with Galactic Wildlife Service. We have extraction teams en route to your location. Maintain position for immediate pickup." Nora looked around at the nightmare jungle full of coordinated predators and 5 alien cubs who'd somehow learned human combat doctrine by watching her fight for their lives. "About time," she muttered. The rescue shuttles appeared over the tree line like cavalry in an ancient war movie. 3 heavy-lift vehicles with full wildlife containment protocols. Professional rescue teams with proper equipment and actual weapons. They landed in a defensive triangle around Nora's position, and immediately everything went wrong. The cubs took one look at the armed strangers approaching their pack mother and went into full protective mode. They arranged themselves in a defensive formation around Nora, making sounds that her translator rendered as "threat to pack leader, eliminate intruders." "It's okay," Nora told them. "They're here to help." But the cubs had spent the last 2 hours learning that survival meant trusting only their pack mother and killing everything else. They weren't interested in alternative interpretations. Commander Voss approached with his hands visible and empty. "Dr. Blake, I'm here to extract you and the cubs. You can extract me, Nora said carefully, but I don't think they're going anywhere without me. The cubs need to be transferred to a proper containment facility for medical evaluation and… Kess hissed. It was a sound that managed to be both adorable and absolutely terrifying. The other cubs joined in, creating a harmony that made every predator in the area suddenly very interested in their location again. They've imprinted on me, Nora realized. They think I'm their pack leader. That's impossible. Vorthak cubs don't imprint on other species. Nora looked down at 5 alien children who'd learned human military tactics in 2 hours, and were now prepared to fight a professional rescue team to protect their chosen pack mother. Tell that to them. The Shadowstalkers chose that moment to attack the rescue perimeter, drawn by the cubs' territorial displays. The professional extraction team found themselves fighting off invisible wolf things while trying to negotiate with a human who'd accidentally adopted 5 tactical geniuses. And somewhere in the Preserve's control center, automated systems were recording everything for the Galactic Wildlife Service's review board. They were about to witness something that would rewrite their understanding of interspecies bonding, assuming anyone survived long enough to file the report. The Shadowstalker attack on the rescue perimeter was when Nora discovered that maternal instincts could apparently override common sense, basic survival instincts, and possibly several laws of physics. One moment she was trying to negotiate custody of 5 alien cubs with Commander Voss. The next moment, she was watching invisible wolf things converge on the rescue team, while her cubs made increasingly agitated sounds that roughly translated to, "Pack in danger, kill everything, protect family." "Stay with the rescue team," Nora told the cubs. "I'll handle this." She stepped outside the defensive perimeter with nothing but her improvised club and a half-empty can of wildlife deterrent spray. The cubs immediately followed her. "I said stay back." "Pack mother fight. Pack fight," Kess chirped, taking position on Nora's left flank. The other cubs spread out in the formation they'd learned by watching her, creating a defensive triangle that would have impressed a military instructor. Commander Voss stared through his helmet visor as 5 baby aliens who should have been cowering in fear instead demonstrated coordinated tactical positioning. "How did they learn that?" "Osmosis," Nora said grimly, swinging her club at a Shadowstalker that had materialized too close to little Pip. "They're fast learners." What followed was the most surreal combat experience of Nora's life. She fought off invisible predators while 5 cubs provided tactical support, calling out positions and flanking maneuvers in a mixture of Vorthak pack speak and basic standard they'd somehow absorbed from her. "Left side threat," Tor yipped, and Nora spun to catch a Shadowstalker mid-pounce. "Behind danger close," Jala warned, and the cubs immediately shifted formation to protect their pack mother's blind spot. They weren't just helping, they were coordinating. They were thinking 3 moves ahead and adapting to battlefield conditions in real time. "This is impossible," Commander Voss muttered over the communication channel. "Cubs don't develop tactical intelligence until they're at least 2 years old." "Tell that to them," Nora grunted, using a move her military father had taught her to flip a Shadowstalker over her shoulder and into a tree. The cubs immediately mimicked the motion, practicing the technique on smaller targets. In the Preserve's control center, automated systems were recording everything and transmitting it to the Galactic Wildlife Service's Emergency Response Center. Across the galaxy, xenobiologists and military strategists were watching one human teach 5 alien predators how to fight dirty. And winning. The Shadowstalker pack retreated after losing 3 of their number to a combination of human persistence and tactical cubs. The rescue perimeter was secure, but the standoff was just beginning. "Dr. Blake," Commander Voss said carefully, "we need to discuss the cubs' transfer to appropriate facilities." The cubs immediately arranged themselves protectively around Nora, making sounds that didn't need translation. The message was clear. Anyone who wanted to separate them from their pack mother would have to go through 5 increasingly competent baby apex predators. "They're not going anywhere," Nora said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Doctor, you can't possibly be serious. You're talking about adopting 5 alien predators." "I'm talking about not abandoning 5 children who've decided I'm their mother." "They're not children, they're…" Kess hissed. It was a sound that made Commander Voss take an involuntary step backward despite his powered armor and military training. They're children who happen to be apex predators, Nora corrected. There's a difference. That's when the official delegation arrived. Director Jan from the Galactic Wildlife Service descended from a diplomatic shuttle with enough bureaucratic authority to relocate entire species. She was flanked by xenobiological specialists, legal advisors, and what appeared to be a small army of clipboard-wielding officials. Dr. Blake, Director Jan announced, I'm here to resolve this situation and ensure the proper custody of the Vorthak cubs. The cubs took one look at the approaching delegation and went into full defensive mode. They positioned themselves in a protective formation around Nora that would have made a military tactician weep with pride. Cubs stay with pack mother, Kess announced in carefully pronounced standard. Anyone try take cubs, cubs fight. Director Jan stared at the speaking alien baby. Did that cub just threaten a galactic official? She stated a fact, Nora said. They're not leaving with you. Doctor, you've had these cubs for less than 6 hours. They can't have formed meaningful attachments in that time. Pip, the smallest cub, chose that moment to demonstrate exactly how meaningful his attachment was. He climbed onto Nora's shoulder and began grooming her hair while purring loud enough to vibrate her bones. Attachment theory, Nora said dryly, apparently works faster when survival is involved. The standoff continued for 20 minutes, while the cubs demonstrated increasingly sophisticated protective behaviors. They established perimeter watches, coordinated defensive positions, and began making tactical assessments of potential threats among the official delegation. This is unprecedented, muttered Dr. Vex, the expedition's xenobiologist. Vorthak cubs don't imprint on other species. It's biologically impossible. Apparently nobody told them that, Nora replied, watching Tor and Vin practice the flanking maneuver she'd used against the Shadowstalkers. Director Yan tried a different approach. Dr. Blake, even if we accepted your custody claim, you have no facilities for raising apex predator cubs, no training in Vorthak child rearing, no understanding of their dietary requirements or social needs. I'll figure it out. These cubs will grow into creatures capable of destroying starships. Then I'll teach them not to destroy starships. The cubs, following the conversation through their translators, began making soft, concerned sounds. They'd picked up enough context to understand that the official delegation wanted to take them away from their chosen pack mother. Kess stood up on her hind legs and addressed Director Yan directly. Pack mother save cubs. Pack mother fight beasts. Pack mother teach cubs be strong. Cubs choose pack mother. Pack mother choose cubs. This is how pack works. Director Yan blinked at the 5-month-old cub who was delivering what amounted to a legal argument for interspecies adoption. Even if I accepted that logic, she said carefully, there are protocols, procedures, legal frameworks for interspecies custody that... The Preserve's emergency systems chose that moment to announce the arrival of more uninvited guests. Warning. Multiple apex predator convergence detected. Recommend immediate evacuation. Through the jungle canopy, Nora could see them coming. Everything with teeth, claws, or acid glands that hadn't already been attracted to their location was now heading their way, drawn by the cubs' increasing agitation and the scent of fear from the official delegation. We need to leave, Commander Voss said. Now. The cubs come with me, Nora stated. Dr. Blake. They come with me, or we all stay here and become lunch for the Preserve's apex predator population. Your choice. Director Yan looked at the approaching wave of hungry wildlife, then at 5 alien cubs who had positioned themselves to defend their chosen human with their lives. This is highly irregular. Lady, this whole day has been highly irregular. Are we leaving or are we having this argument while something with more teeth than sense eats us? The evacuation was organized chaos. 5 shuttles loaded with officials, rescue personnel, and 1 human xenobiologist who'd accidentally adopted 5 alien apex predators, who refused to be separated from her. The cubs rode in Nora's lap during the ascent, purring contentedly while she tried to process what had just happened to her life. Pack mother, Kess said softly. What happens now? Nora looked at 5 small faces gazing up at her with absolute trust and affection. 5 alien children who'd learned human tactical doctrine in a matter of hours and chosen her as their leader. "Now," she said, "I guess I learn how to be a mother to 5 space tigers." The cubs purred louder. In the shuttle's communication system, Director Yan was having a very difficult conversation with her superiors at Galactic Wildlife Service headquarters. "Sir, the situation has evolved beyond standard protocols. The cubs have demonstrated unprecedented behavioral modification and refuse separation from the human. We may need to consider alternative arrangements." The response was immediate and predictably bureaucratic. "Alternative arrangements? Director, are you suggesting we allow a human civilian to adopt 5 apex predator cubs?" "Sir, I'm suggesting that we may not have a choice. The cubs have imprinted so completely that forced separation could cause permanent psychological damage. And frankly, sir, they've learned combat techniques from the human that make them more dangerous than standard Vorthak cubs." "More dangerous how?" Director Yan looked at Nora, who was currently teaching the cubs how to properly buckle safety restraints while they listened with the focused attention of military cadets. "They think tactically now, sir. They coordinate. They plan. The human has essentially created 5 apex predators with military training." The silence on the communication channel stretched for a full minute. "Director Yan, please tell me you're not serious." "Sir, I've watched these cubs demonstrate formation tactics, coordinated defensive positions, and strategic thinking that shouldn't develop for another 18 months. The human has somehow accelerated their cognitive development through crisis bonding." Another pause. "Get them to headquarters. All of them. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Director Yan looked at Nora, who was now explaining the concept of inside voices to 5 alien predators who were hanging on her every word. The galaxy was about to discover that human parenting instincts, when combined with the right circumstances, could apparently rewire the evolutionary development of other species. And somehow, that wasn't even the strangest part of her week. 6 months after the Kythara Preserve incident, Nora Blake stood in her expanded laboratory watching 5 adolescent Vorthak predators demonstrate tactical maneuvers that would have impressed Alliance Special Forces. They were no longer the terrified cubs she'd rescued. Kess had grown into a sleek 6-foot predator, whose silver stripes now carried an almost metallic sheen. Tor and Vin moved with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers. Jala had developed an uncanny ability to read terrain and predict enemy movement patterns. And little Pip, no longer so little, had become their designated scout and communications specialist. They were still her children. They were also the most effective combat unit she'd ever seen. "Pack Mother," Kess said, approaching with a data tablet. "Galactic Protection Services is requesting our assistance with another situation." Nora looked at the mission briefing. "Ecological disaster on Zarian Prime. Juvenile Mantok predators stranded in a collapsing volcanic system. Standard rescue operation complicated by extreme environmental hazards, and the fact that Mantok cubs were notorious for their aggressive response to unfamiliar species." "What do you think?" she asked her cubs. "We help," Tor said immediately. "Cubs in danger. We save cubs." The others nodded agreement. 6 months of human influence development had given them not just tactical intelligence, but an expanded sense of pack loyalty that included all young predators, regardless of species. "All right," Nora said. "Let's go save some volcano babies." The transport to Zarian Prime gave Nora time to reflect on how dramatically her life had changed. Her official title was now Interspecies Pack Integration Specialist, which was the Galactic Wildlife Service's bureaucratic way of saying the human who accidentally revolutionized interspecies bonding and now fixes impossible situations involving apex predators. Her cubs had adapted to space travel with the same tactical precision they applied to everything else. They'd established duty rotations, memorized ship layouts, and developed contingency plans for every possible emergency scenario. They were also teenagers, which meant they argued about everything while simultaneously displaying perfect coordination in crisis situations. "Pip's scout reports are getting sloppy," Vin complained during the pre-mission briefing. "My reports are comprehensive," Pip retorted, "unlike someone's equipment maintenance." "Children," Nora said mildly, and they immediately fell silent. Respect for pack hierarchy was still hardwired into their genetics, even if everything else about their development had been revolutionized. Xerion Prime was a hellscape of active volcanism and toxic atmosphere. The Mantok cubs were trapped on an island of stable rock surrounded by lava flows, and the rescue window was closing rapidly. Standard extraction protocols won't work, Nora observed, studying the tactical display. The environmental hazards make conventional approaches impossible. We improvise, Kess said confidently. Pack adapts. Pack survives. What followed was a masterclass in human-alien cooperation. Nora coordinated the overall strategy, while her cubs implemented tactics that combined human persistence, hunting with Vorthak pack dynamics. They worked as a single unit, communicating through a mixture of hand signals, vocal cues, and what appeared to be pure telepathic understanding. The Mantok cubs initially responded to the rescue attempt with aggressive territorial behavior, but something changed when they saw how Nora interacted with her own pack. The humans' calm authority and obvious affection for her alien children created a template for trust that transcended species barriers. They're following your cub's lead, observed Commander Voss, watching the extraction through long-range feeds. The Mantok juveniles are mimicking your pack's behavior patterns. Children learned from other children, Nora said, directing her cubs to establish safe zones while the volcanic activity increased around them. It's universal psychology. The extraction succeeded with 0 casualties and in record time. But more importantly, it demonstrated something that sent ripples through the galactic scientific community. The Mantok cubs began displaying modified behavior patterns within hours of exposure to Nora's pack. They became calmer, more cooperative, and showed signs of accelerated cognitive development that mirrored what had happened to the Vorthak cubs. Dr. Blake, Director Yan said during the post-mission debrief, we need to discuss the implications of what we've observed. Which implications specifically? Your interaction with apex predator species appears to trigger enhanced development patterns. The cubs you've worked with consistently demonstrate intelligence levels and behavioral modifications that shouldn't be possible. Nora looked at her own cubs, who were currently teaching the rescued Mantok juveniles basic tactical formations disguised as play activities. Maybe the problem isn't with the cubs, she said. Maybe the problem is with how everyone else treats them. Meaning most species interact with apex predator young as threats to be contained rather than children to be nurtured. I treat them like intelligent beings capable of learning and growth. Apparently, that makes a difference. 6 months later, Nora's operation had expanded to include a training facility, a research division, and what amounted to the galaxy's first interspecies military academy. Her cubs had graduated to instructor status, teaching young predators from dozens of species how to think strategically, while maintaining their natural hunting instincts. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy, Director Yan observed, watching Nora conduct a training session with representatives from 12 different apex predator species, isn't an apex predator. No? It's a human with something to protect. They don't just survive impossible situations. They make everything around them better at surviving too. Nora was currently explaining the concept of controlled aggression to a mixed group of alien teenagers, while her original cubs provided tactical demonstrations. The juveniles watched with the focused attention of students learning life-or-death skills. Pack Mother, Kess said after the session ended. When do we graduate? Nora looked at 5 young adults who'd grown from terrified babies into confident predators without losing their capacity for affection and loyalty. You graduated 6 months ago, she said. You just haven't realized it yet. Then what happens now? Nora gestured toward the training facility, where dozens of young aliens were learning that survival didn't require abandoning compassion, and that strength was most effective when combined with intelligence. Now you teach the next generation that being an apex predator means more than just having the biggest teeth. The cubs, now young adults but still her children, exchanged glances and nodded agreement. They'd learned more than just human tactics. They'd learned human values, and they were ready to pass those lessons on to the rest of the galaxy. Besides, Nora added with a grin, Someone has to keep me from getting eaten by the next batch of impossible rescue missions. Kess purred, a sound that now carried undertones of affectionate amusement rather than simple contentment. "Pack mother," she said. "That's what family is for." In the distance, another emergency beacon began transmitting distress signals from a system experiencing unprecedented wildlife crisis. Nora looked at her cubs, who were already checking their equipment and reviewing tactical protocols. The galaxy's first human-trained apex predator pack was ready for their next mission. And somewhere in the bureaucratic depths of Galactic Wildlife Service, officials were updating their emergency response protocols with a single critical addendum. When all else fails, call the human.